back to another edition of the guest host series. I'm super excited about this series. I'm very excited about today's guest host, Cornelia Elbrecht. I love this woman. She's amazing. Cornelia is an author, leader in groundbreaking art therapy techniques with a particular focus on healing trauma. An art therapist with over 40 years experience, she is a renowned author, educator, and the founder and director of the Institute for Sensorimotor Art Therapy. Cornelia studied at the School for Initiatic Therapy in the Black Forest, Germany, and holds degrees in fine arts and arts education. Today, she's going to be interviewing Dr. Sabâ Başoğlu. Sabâ is a clinical psychologist and sensorimotor art therapist specializing in clay field therapy and guided drawing. Sabâ is an associate professor at Galata University in Istanbul and works predominantly with adults and teenagers, integrating sensorimotor art therapy with phenomenological psychology, psychodynamic-existential approaches, and body-informed trauma therapy. Enjoy.
Welcome, Sabâ Başoğlu. You are professor for psychology at Galata University in Istanbul. You have a master's in forensic psychology and a PhD in clinical psychology, and you wrote your thesis on clay field therapy, which is something I have researched for the past 50 years, and I'm very passionate about as in touch therapy, that involves a box filled with about 10 kilos of very smooth clay. And adult clients work with their eyes closed, and it is not about creating and making something, but about the relationship with yourself and the material and the motor impulses projected into the field and the sensory feedback that you receive from this experience. So you researched this with highly traumatized clients and came to quite a surprising term that you created out of your research that you called embodied reflection. Tell us something about that.
Okay, thank you. So embodied reflection is a product of a research, and this research was in-depth, process-oriented, and client-focused research. So we had these two interviews. First was after the first clayfield session, and after 12 clayfield sessions.
So they had 12 sessions each.
Yeah, they had.
Yeah,
they have 12 sessions. So, like in real life psychotherapy, all participants had different traumatic experiences and different bodily symptoms, and unique clayfield experiences. But
so I understand that all of them had unidentifiable medical issues.
Thank you for reminding me of that. We work with the individuals with medically unexplained symptoms. And they were talking about their own process. They were describing their own process, and they were reflecting on how and why maybe the transformation occurred in clayfield therapy. And they were comparing their clayfield experience with their previous talk or body-informed therapy experiences. So although they are unique individuals, a common path emerged from their answers that we call embodied reflection. So embodied reflection contains three elements, and first is body. Yeah, is sensation and perception. And second, relationality, my relationship with myself and with the world, and meaning-making process. So, and I know that embodiment is a well-known concept today, thanks to neuroscience and new approaches to trauma and body-informed therapies, because we are engaging in a relationship with the world, first with our body. And we know that now trauma is primarily a bodily experience. And so,
and from my experience at the clay field, it's a haptic experience, so a touch experience, and so much trauma is also communicated or learned or experienced through touch.
yeah, like love or violence, and it's the closest relationship with ourselves and with the world, and it contains inevitably relationality, as you always say, that you cannot touch without being touched. So and clay field therapy, of course, shares the similar insights with other body-focused therapies, but it differs from them in terms of relationality. So I can give an example. Like, just imagine that you sit on meditation and observe your body, the sensations, or what's happening in the room, or you have maybe this knowledge of body-informed or trauma-informed body practices, and you can change the movements, but you're alone there. You're not actually engaging in a relationship. But in clay field therapy, we're not just working with body, we're working with as bodily beings in relationships. So it's, of course, all therapies are built on relationship, but the difference is touch. And I remember participants said that in talk therapies, they can change the subjects, or they could even choose not to look at therapist's eyes. But they said that in clay field is always there, so concrete, and there's always a collision with themselves and relationships.
And 10 kilos of clay offer resistance.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy to move. You have to actually engage your body in moving it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard work. You're not just talking and sitting somewhere. You're living an experience, and this is really important because we're living in a relational world, and it's just all during the day we're engaging in different relationships. So we're living this relationship with our bodies. So our body is constantly changing, and especially in trauma, we know that we can repeat our traumatic relationships even in our adulthood. We can repeat this violent, neglectful, abusive relationships, or we can avoid relationships, although we want to engage and we need some. And also our relationship with ourselves, and we're describing ourselves like, with some labels and using some psychological terms. Oh, I have attachment problem, or I feel this insecurity in myself all the time. I have no control about my life.
So in clay field therapy, for example, that looks like that someone, even though they want to touch it, they can't really touch it, or they just touch it with their fingertips, the material. Even though there's so much there, they can't connect with it.
Yeah, and I can give an example. It will be maybe easier. So I remember this session that my client was just emptying the box and just and putting this clay outside, and she put her hands in the box. And when I asked her how she was feeling, and she said, okay, it's this thing that we're all familiar. We're saying okay for the things that we are not actually okay. Yeah. Okay. So but her face was was so tense. Her body was collapsed and she couldn't breathe. And after a while, she took the clay inside and covered her hand, and all of your face was relaxed and she could breathe and she was laughing. So, and first was her traumatic story, and she didn't know about it. She wasn't aware about it, and she was repeating every day in her life. She had this place, protected place, but she was paying it with the loneliness. And this, she was alone in this place.
And that was
this
the empty box.
Yeah, that was the empty box.
Yeah.
And the second was again her own place, and she was protected, but she was cherished. She was loved. She was held and contained. And by reflecting to this two different relationships and the experience of her body, two different experiences of her body. First, she could realize what was happening with her. And then the new experience that she could change about her life, a new perspective about her life. So
she could do that. She could do that herself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that she listens. I remember this definition. It was wonderful. One participant said that Clayfield gave her a word that she could interpret and transform. And it's so, it was so obvious, it's in the same session. Water can mean a clingy, suffocating mother, and can turn into a meaning of a compassionate mother. It's just the water. It's not something big. Or the box means first maybe this limiting boundaries and turns to a meaning of protective boundaries. And let's imagine that even if you can just change a word with these three basic materials, what can you do in the life is kind of a full of possibilities to create yourself and yourself again. And it's not just
the setting is very, very simple. It's the box with the clay and a sponge and water. Yeah. And clients can take the clay out, as you described, or they can put water in, or they can bring the clay back in. They can dilute it and make it smooth, or they can build with it. The main part is always like I project motor impulses into the material, and I receive sensory feedback from this experience, what we call sensorimotor art therapy. And I find that very often trauma interrupts this feedback process, this relational process, that either I can't move, I don't dare to touch this and do something, or I go and go and go and make and do, but I never stop to actually experience what I've created.
And what is wonderful is not just the distraction and creation process within the hands, is also kind of an abstraction too, because it's meaning making is really important for all of us, and also for therapy, because trauma can cause this sense of meaningless emptiness, this a void and darkness. And I like this definition of trauma in self-psychology as like existential uncertainty.
Existential uncertainty.
Uncertain, yeah. But you have a concrete world within your hands, and it's not me. It's the clients who are saying that clay feel it's at the same time themselves and at the same time the world. And they are not talking about their past experience only. And they said that in let's say that in talk therapies, they can mention or talk about what they lived in when they were a baby, or they can imagine how to be a baby. But they were so clear that they were a baby in that relationship. So, and it's wonderful because you are the baby who cannot understand the world, but you not verbalize, but at the same time, the adult who can interpret what was happening and what can be changed in their hands. So, and it is like you are not anymore an actor in a story that is already written. Okay, and you are the writer of this story, or you are not obliged to this reality that is given to you. You can change with this physical effort, this reality, and make it on your own. So, this new sense of self or the perception of the world emerges from this process. Is not just a mental realization, or not just a body awareness process, or not just the words that you may forget in 2 or 3 days. This is something you live. This is something that you experience and feel throughout your whole entire body. And this is what we call embodied reflection. Yeah. It's kind of a profound integration of self in a single relational, reflective, and transformative process. I find this is wonderful because it's not just healing the trauma symptoms. It's just an existential journey that you engage first with your hands and throughout your body. And you have this ability to reinterpret your world. And then you take this reinterpretation and again, reflect the clay field and work again, and then have another sense of self. It's just circular and ongoing growing process that is amazing to see how it also changed their everyday life.
Because I would say all your clients were suffering from complex trauma, like early childhood trauma that pre-verbal, and they had physical symptoms like chronic pain, skin diseases. And what happened with these symptoms?
Yeah, they were so clear that their bodily symptoms were dramatically increased in their everyday life, but maybe the most important part, they became kind of a professional to see how their body, and they were using the voice of their body like an intuitive tool. And they could detect and what kind of relationships were not good for them, and what kind of relationships were nourishing for them. So they were not repeating the old relationship patterns in their relationship. Even some of them had this alcohol problem or some anger issues. They were good with themselves and they were out from the story. And it's not just changing in their symptoms, but they were more intuitive and new in this world, like a newborn baby. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So their symptoms decreased significantly after these.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I said increase. Sorry. And not increase, it decreased. Yeah.
Yeah. But more than anything, something that was puzzling them, for years, even not decades, they finally understood why their body was responding to toxic relationships in a particular way. And if I understand you correctly, they could change these relationships, ultimately with themselves.
Yeah, and it was also, for me, it was also magical to witness their new findings. It just, when they were working, oh, actually, I'm an adventurous person. Oh, actually, I like to touch. Oh, yeah, they were like, oh my God, I found someone inside of me that was hidden. And now, yeah, it's someone different that I didn't know. And they were so enthusiastic about themselves and new possibilities of themselves. And this is, I guess, the main intention of psychotherapy, and finding new possibilities of ourselves. And it's, when you look at, clay-based, yeah, it's like, it can be seen like we're playing with the mods. But no, it's it's about changing the world. Yeah.
Thank you, Sabâ. This was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cornelia.